Hi, Takudzwa. How are you?
Hello, Farai. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just excited about what we're going to talk about today. It's been a great, build up to this particular moment, starting last year when we had our first cohort of Shasha Fellows, and now as we're thinking about the idea of building community, which is one of the things that we care about at Shasha, and just getting people to know a bit more about how we think about our program, the Shasha Beach program. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to have this conversation and sort of like invite people. So, whoever is listening in, they just will have an idea and an experience of how a peer to peer mentorship experience goes like.
Yes.
So, my name is Farai Munjoma. I am the CEO of Shasha Network. I'm based in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I'm doing my master's in entrepreneurship at the University of Edinburgh Business School.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this great invitation. And I'm looking forward to a great conversation. So, my name is Takudzwa Caitano. I'm the project manager for Shasha Network. I'm a sophomore student currently majoring in economics. I'm passionate about knowledge building, capability building in Africa. And yeah, get it.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks a lot. So the first topic that we cover with our scholars when they come in is this idea of writing your own story under self leadership, right?
Yeah.
So on day number one, we're talking about writing your own story. And the reason why I think self leadership starts there is because when you cannot articulate your own story and who you are, people end up articulating that for you. I don't know if
Exactly.
you've experienced something similar to that.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there is at the value in telling your own stories. I think the foundational start of knowing yourself, right?
Mm,
I feel like before you like you go anywhere, like you talk to people, expose yourself to the external environment. I think it's really important to know what drives you. What are your values, what are your mission, right? And I felt like I just want to tell you a story. I think in high school, I think that's when like I first had the experience of telling my own story
mm,
because I felt like when I was growing up, it was sort of like my value system, my belief system was driven by what I can call the guardians, right? And the
mm,
guardians, our parents, and also like because I was at a boarding school, our teachers, right?
yeah.
So I felt like, for example, what I wanted to do, things I thought like those were the right things to do, even the path that I wanted to follow, were sort of like detected by those guardians, right? So for me, as
Sounds very familiar.
yeah, it sounds very familiar to most
Yeah,
people. Like I
yeah,
remember when you're like at home, whereby the uncles come and they'll be say telling you that to that doctor and all those things, right?
yeah.
Those are all things, right? That we face, right? So for me, I had to kind of like no, my first I call of like moment of truth came when I went for this program called the Year We Are in African Scholars Program, right?
Mm,
That's when I was exposed to people from different backgrounds with a different line of thinking. And I was like, I remember one session we had about like, what do you want to do when you want to grow up?
mm,
Me, I was used to my own guardian culture by saying, I want to be a doctor. Then I end there.
yeah,
But people told me that I want to like change the storytelling narrative of Africa. Some people would say that I want to make sure I build efficient systems of government in Africa. I was like, wow, I really have to tell my own story. And that starts with a deep reflection on,
mm.
knowing yourself, your values, and your mission.
Wow. It's very familiar as well because as you're going through that, how did you feel when people were like, want to build systems and focus on sustainability in Africa? What did you personally want to do and why? What was your why?
Okay, before I even reached the why, I was kind of like, I had many questions first. I
Mm,
questioned a lot of things. For example, I was like, I was at the right school, I was learning the right stuff. If
mm,
I can't even articulate my mission that well.
mm,
So I think that program ended and I did not have a clear mission. But
mm,
I later on like reflected upon what I had done before and
yeah.
what I'm doing now. And for me, I was like, okay, I feel like my why is to make sure that to create systems of generational leadership and wealth, which has become a core part of my values and what I believe in. So it was sort of like self-sufficient,
Mm-hmm.
service of myself. That it became sort of like my why. Like I'm living here for the sake of other people,
Yeah.
not really for myself. So I feel like that was a why. But I think the first thing was asking questions because
Mm.
I had to question a lot of things about myself, my environment, and my training. And I feel like that was a good start for me.
Yeah, because as we are students, and we've seen this with many students that come through our program, there is no confidence in who they are. So someone
Yeah,
comes in and says, I want to be a doctor. And
yeah,
then they're like, but I enjoy playing the guitar. I like playing the piano. I love performing. Um, but I really don't enjoy medicine or anything to do with sciences, but I want
yeah,
to be a doctor. And it's all this self-esteem that comes from external influences and factors. So you
yeah,
have to have a correct answer to fit in. So I remember, when I was doing my high school, there were three classes: sciences, arts, and commercials.
yeah,
And just like you, I always questioned everything. So I went to the sciences class and I asked people, what do you want to do when you grow up? Trust
yeah,
me, every student in that class, every kid was like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a pharmacist, right? And I was like, okay. Then I went to the other class where people were doing arts. So these are history, literature, divinity, geography, and everyone, they wanted to be a lawyer. And then I went to my commercials class. Everyone, they wanted to be a chartered accountant. Then I asked myself that the question that does every person that I meet in the street become a doctor, a lawyer, or a chartered accountant, or an engineer for
yeah.
those that were doing physics? And that wasn't the case. There are so many programs out there. So what I then realized is there was no really deep introspection. And even as we were being taught, no one was asking us to pause and think, who do you want to be? What contribution do you want to make to
Exactly.
society? What do
Yeah,
you owe to yourself, right? To
yeah,
to to be able to express yourself. Because one thing that we believe at Shasha is every student is a champion. And as cliche as that might sound, we believe that everyone has that inner spark to do, something that they care about. But the question always comes is, do people in my community or even in my family understand what I care about? And when
exactly.
no community that understands that what you do matters, when there is no, information about what you care about, if you like graphic designing or if you like animation, and no one has ever made the smallest animation in your community, then people are going to look at that and say, oh, there's no value in this.
Yeah,
So through the Shasha network, we try to bring all those different elements, the mentorship, the community, and the information to give students the motivation to go. So let's
yeah.
come back to this idea of writing your story. In what cases have you had to articulate your story over your journey? Where do you feel like, or which spaces or situations or scenarios have you had to articulate your story, and how has that helped you during the course of that experience?
Yeah, great. So I feel like there are many cases I have to do that, but I think I have to stick to the major milestones, which I call the moment of truth.
Mm,
I feel like the first real moment of truth came when I was about to apply to college.
mhm.
So I was in like last year of high school and I was thinking of which college I wanted to apply to, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was like the first thing was not even to the application itself, was the choice. Which colleges would I want to apply to?
Yeah.
And that's where the story begins. You
Mm,
have to really like look at yourself like, what are your values? What do you believe in? What do you want to achieve? So
mm,
which colleges can help you, in that pathway, to achieve whatever you have. So that was the start. So I
mm,
remember creating a list of sort of like three tires,
mm,
whereby I say this is my tire first tire universities that I want to apply to. not based on prestige or the ranking or whatever, but on based on what I wanted to achieve, you know.
Mm.
So I remember my first listed schools such as Stanford and some schools such as in China, such as Chinua and all that stuff.
Mm.
And they were like, I remember one of my mentors looking at my list and saying like, where is the Harvard, where is the MIT? I was saying like,
Mm.
they are good schools, but they don't fit what I want to achieve, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like that was the start, you know? So in going through the application process, right, when I was applying and answering those questions and writing those essays, you know, they were really for you. For example, I expected maybe they're going to ask me like, you know, what's your favorite subject or how do you solve this problem?
Mm.
But they were really personal questions, you know. For
Mm.
example, like what do you enjoy in doing in your spare time? You know, tell us about your time. Write a letter to your roommate.
Mm.
Tell us about the time when you were asked to solve something and you failed to solve it. How did you react? You know, they were all asking personal questions, right? That you have to do about you. You know,
And that's
so
confusing if all your life you've been asked what's the equation for this, or
what
give us a recap of what happened in World War One and World War Two.
exactly?
You're always apart, you're always far away from the
Yeah,
things of today. And when you're
exactly.
asked, when you find yourself in that situation where you're asked, what do you care about? Or what do you think about this? Or how does
Exactly.
this personally affect you? And how do you want to see change happen?
Yeah,
And it's that ability to draw your story, bring it up front, and connect it to the context,
the
which then
context.
many
Yeah,
people are like, oh my God, what's happening now?
exactly. That's very relevant because in my main
Mm,
essay, right, they asked me about, you know, tell us about your. It was like an open-ended question, right? So you could write
yeah.
about anything. That's the prompt I chose.
Mm,
On when the common application essay, right?
yeah.
So as I was thinking about what do I write about, you know,
Mm,
I found myself like writing about Shasha. For you, for the international audience, like Shasha is like our staple food, right? It's made of corn and maize corn and all that stuff.
mm,
And the experience was really because I was at a boarding school,
yeah.
and one of the happiest moments in the boarding school is when you go to eat. You know, that's when you like, wow, you know, food and everything. You know, so
Yeah.
for me, the issue was about what moment brings you joy, and I was like that moment of going, you know,
Mm,
every Sunday to eat Saja and pork, you know.
yes.
And I linked it to my values, you know, values of confidence, you know,
Mm,
values of actually when you are eating, you know, of actually like, you know, that moment when you're eating something, right? And you wanna like figure out whether it's tasting good and what, that self, you know,
yeah.
questioning and all. Those are some of the things that I wrote about my essay, you know. And I remember when I received like the offer letter from Stanford, right?
Mm,
One of the admission officers actually wrote me a small note saying that that essay was like inspired me. It was like,
mm,
so how can someone connect food to values, to a story?
exactly.
So I feel like
Why?
there are
That's
some things around us which
mm,
influence our lives. And I feel like writing about them like brings them to life, you know? So I
mm,
feel like that's the one of the important things about writing and
yeah.
even a better thing writing your own story.
As we're talking about the idea of food, I love cooking. I love food.
Yeah,
Assuming someone else who read your application understands food, because food is a day-to-day experience. We eat food, but we
exactly.
really never connect to eating beyond, that.
Yeah,
But as someone that has context to where you went for school,
yeah,
um, that moment where you've been working throughout the day and the bell rings, right? Ding, 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 ding. Let's go eat. Everyone stops what they were doing. You
yeah,
go sit on your table. You have other young people sitting around you. And
exactly.
there's a
Exactly.
community to eating,
Community.
right? There's a community around the food. There's storytelling around the food. And even people, when they're dishing the food, right?
Exactly.
There's that aspect of sharing. So
Yeah,
I remember, if today was my turn for sharing food on the table and I didn't give someone enough, starch or protein,
yeah.
then next time they're gonna give me little as well, right?
Exactly.
And it's those things that taught us to negotiate and to be mindful and empathetic
Yeah,
and connect. And everyone enjoyed food. You'd
exactly.
go for
Yeah,
breakfast, lunch, dinner, and all these midday snacks. and I think you being able to connect food makes you unique, because not many people are gonna talk about food in the
Exactly.
moment when they were talking about things. So it, yeah, being mindful in writing allows you to then tap into that. But yeah, this is just the beginning of writing your own story. And as we're trying to connect dots, in our next lesson we are going to be talking more about what it takes to be a champion, right? And it all comes from being able to first articulate what your story is,
Yeah.
and connect it to the things that you care about, and then we'll take it from there. Any last questions or thoughts before we move on to good?
I think the last thought is that like everything starts with you, right? You are
Mm,
the foundation or the guardian of your own future, right?
yeah,
So you're writing your own life story. So it begins with you. So that's the point of writing your own story because everything starts within you.
awesome. Thanks a lot.